Welcome everyone to the NEMSIS v3 implementation call. Today is December 18th. We appreciate you being here with us this morning. On your screen, you should see a poll. This is specifically for the vendors. This is regarding if you want NEMSIS to announce when a product has successfully completed compliance testing. We'd love to be able to put this out in recognition through our social media platforms or our email distribution lists, but we wanted to get your feedback on whether or not that is something that you would support being promoted. I'm going to go ahead and end the polling. So right now it shows 78% in favor of promoting that your product has completed compliance. So let's see if I can share results. There we go. You should be able to see 78% are in favor of that. So thanks for your feedback on that. We appreciate that. Let's go ahead and jump into the agenda for today. If you haven't had a chance to update your name and software product that you represent, please make sure that you do that. Should have the agenda on your screen now. We're going to start with Clay is going to talk to us for a few minutes about the maintaining software compliance policy.
All right, thank you, Julianne. Thank you, everyone, for joining. It's great to have you on the call so close to the holidays. Thanks for joining us. Julianne, if you would be so kind as maybe go to the NEMSIS website. Let's go to the compliance policy documents there under technical resources, and then choose compliance over there on the left top. There you go, yeah. And then let's scroll down just a little bit to the compliance resources that are for 3435. There you go, yeah, right there. So we've been speaking with you over the last couple of weeks about the new compliance process that's been put in place. It will begin January 1st of 2020. This was initiated by the DMC meeting that was held in Salt Lake City at NEMSIS in the spring of this year. We've been talking about it. There's been a couple of questions that have come up related to it. Julianne, if you would open, let's just go to like the 3.5 resources and maybe open up the collect data systems or receive and process documents. And so these are the new compliance process documents, one for collect data, one for receive and process. If you go down towards the end, there's a section there that talks about maintaining compliance and the compliance policy. To continue down. Great right there. So here's where you'll find verbiage related to the process that we've been describing. I'll just summarize it briefly that will now be requiring retesting under a version every 2 years. The compliance will come into effect in January 1 of 2021. So you'll have the opportunity to complete the compliance process during the year 2020 before it becomes a needed process. So feel free to read through this. There is now attendance requirement associated with maintaining compliance. That is that a software product needs to have a representative on this call for 70% of the calls during the annual year, and then also needs to have a representative that attends our V3 implementation meeting that's held in Park City traditionally here in Utah. There's been a couple of questions related to the process, so let's just go through those briefly. Great questions. One question that came to us is whether all V3.4.0 products need to comply with this new maintenance or the new compliance process, and the answer to that is yes. And so beginning in January 1 of 2020, all products that have previously gained certification as a NEMSIS 3.4.0 process will need to go through the compliance testing again during the year 2020 if they haven't in the last 2 years, and ensure that they're updated by January 1st of 2021. So any questions related to current V3.4.0 products? Okay. Then the second question that came up, which was another really good question, is we're in the marketplace clearly seeing software companies that are purchasing or assimilating other software products. And if a company has done something like that, how will we be checking to ensure that they are attending these calls and also attending the meeting? We had some lengthy discussions with the Office of EMS about how best to approach that type of an issue. And what we've landed on is the idea that if a company has purchased another software product, if they're maintaining separate development teams, then a representative from that development team needs to be on the call and attend the Park City meeting in the fall of 2020. So we leave that a little bit to your discretion, and that's why, as Julianne indicated on the opening screen that you could see when we started this webinar, that she wants you to indicate the software product that you are on the call to represent. And so I saw, for example, Adam changed his, thank you, Adam, to ensure that we knew that he was representing EMS Charts, which is now subsidiary, maybe not the right word, but a part of Sol. So any questions on how we'll be determining whether or not there's representation on the calls? Okay. Could you go to the compliance testing process screen? So go to the screen where it indicates which software companies have passed compliance. So we talked about the update to this page. You now have a radio button at the top that allows you to choose a version. It's currently on 3.4, which is exactly where I'd like it to be. And then if you scoot down just a little bit, Julianne, we've also talked about this. Here's how we will be tracking your participation on these calls and attendance at the meeting. How we will do this is probably important to talk about. So when we hold our first call in January, if you were on the call, we'll indicate your V3 call participation in that column as 100%. And so if you miss the first call, you'll be at 0%. So we'll follow through in that fashion. We try to figure out what would be the best way to ensure that people could be ensuring that they're at least 70% and make that easily done and make it clear well before the end of the year. And the way that we figure to do that is just to start at 100% for all those who participate in the first call. Any questions about how we'll be tracking that? Okay, great. Well, thanks for all the feedback we've had in regards to trying to solidify this process and making it something that's good for you and good for us and good for the industry. We appreciate your participation. All right, I'll turn the time back over to you, Julianne, to cover the next item.
Hi, Clay.
Go ahead. Did we have a question?
Yeah, I had a question for Clay. So when it comes to the call participation, I heard you're expecting one representative of each specific product that has a development team to attend these calls. So just looking at the screen right here, you would expect water to have a person for street sense and another person for street analytics on each call, or at least 70% of the calls?
Okay, let me see where you're looking. Thank you. Are you looking under the collect data?
Yeah, I'm looking at the screen we're all looking at here. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm sorry. And which one?
The bottom two.
Talking about?
I'm just pulling it out the air because it's in our face here. So you expect literally two people from that organization or that business to be on 70% of these calls.
Yes, if they have different development teams, right? So the idea here is that we want every development team that's working and maintaining a NEMSIS compliant to be up to date in regards to changes or decisions that are made about the product. So So if World Advance of Technology for EMS and Rescue, if they just have one development team for Street Sense and for Street Analytics, we only are expecting one person from that organization to attend the call. But if there are different development teams for each of those folks, we are requiring that there be a representative from each development team. So for you, Keenan, I mean, that raises a good question. So EMS Charts is now a part of your organization. We don't pretend to understand or want to understand how you're choosing to integrate them into your company. But clearly, if you're maintaining, even for the short term, a different development team for EMS Charts and a different development team for the Zoll product, the common Zoll product, then we'd expect 2 people on the call.
I think we should talk about that sort of in depth a little later, because I think there are businesses who have sort of chosen and hired a specific person who represents the entire business and filters data from these calls and from NEMSIS and the states into all of the development teams. So I think we should probably talk about that right now.
Sure. Sure. I'm sure there's a constellation of different approaches that are taken by different companies when they work with different companies or consume different companies. There's just no way for us to know how that's being done. So that's how we're describing it. And if there's other conversations about different constellations or methods that folks are using to ensure the data is clearly communicated to all the development teams that are working on NEMSIS compliant products, we'd be happy.
Clay, I'd like to agree with the other callers' contention. My name is Jim Madison. I'm from Pro Phoenix Corp. I'm the fire products manager, and I have multiple development teams that work for me at the engineering level, but nothing happens on any of those teams unless it goes through me. So I'll be the only one representing our company in these calls.
That's great, Jim, and we completely understand that. I think the underlying kind of message or tenor of what I'm trying to say is clear, right? I think we just want to make sure that every development team that has access to a NEMSIS or is working on a NEMSIS compliant product, that they have the opportunity to hear and receive the news. So if there's a process in place with Zoll or with your company, then we can clearly talk about that. I think the idea is clear. Is the idea clear?
I agree. The idea is
okay.
clear. Right?
Okay.
I just, delved into the minutia a bit to make sure that, you understand that there are work processes in place in various corporations to accommodate this kind of structure. So,
thanks, Jim. Yeah, and we're clearly not trying to make this be prohibitive or in some way punitive. It was made clear to us by all the states that it's important to reduce the burden that they're facing, and even they reduce the burden that we're facing as an industry in regards to data exchange, that we ensure that everybody's kind of on the same page at all times. So however this process is worked within your system and within your company, we're happy to accommodate.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Keenan, does that answer your question as well?
For now, it does. I mean,
okay.
I think we should just take it under consideration that, if we have 6 dev teams, what's the feasibility of having 6 different people on the call? And even more, this annual meeting is not a cheap endeavor, right? And so we don't want to view it as a tax where, we have to spend X amount of thousands of dollars just to send people to sit in a room and talk for 2 days, especially an inordinate amount of people to represent every minute part of the business.
Right. And again, I think I knew this would happen the minute I mentioned development teams. Clearly, I don't think Zoll has 6 products that are NEMSIS compliant. So what I hope the message is clear that we're just trying to ensure that they're for each product that is NEMSIS compliant, that there is a mechanism whereby information shared on this call is made available to that development team. So we're happy to work with you, Keenan, and figure out how that would work, what that looks like for Azul, what that looks like for ImageTrend, for TraumaSoft, for all companies. Clearly, if you want to have a conversation about what that looks like for your organization, feel free to give me a call. I'd be happy to talk about it and make sure that you're properly represented on the V3 call participation column.
Sounds great, Clay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Good questions.
Any other questions regarding the call or annual meeting participation? All right, we'll continue to talk about these issues as well. I'll send out emails on our Google group and the DMC listserv as reminders of the process that is upcoming. Next, we'll move on to the NEMSIS public training calendar for the spring, January through April. Here are the 4 topics that we will be addressing for training. January 7th will be improving agency data quality. The QR code that's down here in the corner, this will add it to your calendar, all 4 of these events. And feel free to share the flyer with partners that would benefit from any of these trainings. Some of them get very specific, and we're able to spend some time on those calls to answer specific questions and to dig a little deeper on those issues. So feel free to share that or to suggest training ideas if you know that you've had partners or stakeholders that are interested in specific areas of the NEMSIS process. Next on the list is, we're back to you, Clay, on the 2019 data submission deadline.
Yeah, thank you. I kind of wanted to begin this item by just really providing a heartfelt thanks to all of the companies that are represented on this call. We've had just a exponential growth in the movement to version 3 this year, and it's just been phenomenal. We're currently setting at the NEMSIS TAC at the national level with a national registry for 2018 that includes 27.8 million EMS activations. With the commitments we have from vendors as they attempt to close out the 2019 year, we figure that we'll be well over 30 million EMS activations in the national repository for 2019. So just an incredible accomplishment by all of the folks on this call and all of your teams to make this EMS data collection system work. It's just been incredible. And the states that have come on have been very interested in sending back data to NEMSIS so that our 3-year rolling data set is more complete. We've received to date 46.3 million records this year. So again, that'll probably close out at 48 million records sent to the National Repository for this year, which is it's just incredible work, and we're so grateful to be working with you folks that work so hard to make this effective. It's just incredible. Thank you for all you do. With version 3 rather than version 2, we have the opportunity to close the annual data sets much earlier than in the past. Lots of the software companies that have been around with us through V2 were used to a, once a year call for data to complete data, and there were many months that were provided for them to complete that work, and we closed the data set usually for the past year and the summer of the next year. But with V3 and the process now working as we had anticipated, we would like to close the 2019 data set in February. We were hoping to have the data set close in the first month of February, but we were on the data manager's call yesterday, and several states indicated that they allow for a 60-day period for an EMS provider to complete a record and submit it. So we may need to extend that to maybe as a Sentinel Day, have it be Valentine's Day or something like that on mid-February. So just wanted to make that announcement. Monet will start after the beginning of the year working with the vendors to see if we can ensure, and with the states, to ensure that we're able to close that 2019 data set in February. Does anybody see any obstacles to doing that? All right, fantastic. Yes, we track the data that's coming in by state. Most states are right up to date, which is just incredible. With just a week or 2 weeks of their data may be lacking in numbers. There's a few states that have low numbers for this last quarter, but it's just been phenomenal, the timeliness that data arrives to us. So we really appreciate all that hard work. All right, if there's no other questions related to the submission deadline, let's go ahead and move to the idea of suggested lists. So again, we have a request from NHTSA in the year 2020 to do our best to see if we can clean up the suggested list elements that use lists that rely on outside standards. So medications, cause of injury, symptoms, impressions. We have tried to wrangle this a little bit with the idea of suggested lists through the journey of version 3. The first suggested lists were just based on V2 plus all the additions that you as vendors had to add because the lists were so truncated in version 2. We took those custom element values that were included and built these big lists and hoped that they would be used. I think some states have used those lists to a large extent. Other states have really varied from them. And what ends up happening is, for example, for 2018, we have 1,700 types of injury. And there's clearly not only a problem with the same type of injury being reported with different codes, but there's also real evidence of just provider fatigue, where they're just not interested in trying to find the right code and choose a code that represents something about the call. For example, pain is a great example. So we do need to somehow fix this. So the NEMSIS team this year actually took all of the V3 data that was provided for 2017, 2018, and part of 2019, and redid all of those suggested lists to include 90% of all of their responses that were captured during that time period would be represented by the codes in the new list. And those new lists are substantially shorter than the previous lists. So we're going to be working with the DMC at NEMSIS with this idea that we'd like to see if we can come up with a more type of a national list for these elements, with the idea that the pattern would still be accepted for each of these elements, and that states would have the ability to add additional codes if they truly felt like they needed to. We need to somehow try to standardize this list nationally. So that's we're going to be working with the DMC beginning early in the year. We're slated to give them a formal presentation on the problems that exist on their February call, and attempt to get them to develop a position by the DMC asking states to accept these as national lists that they would utilize. Any questions related to that work that we plan to do in the beginning of the year?
When do you expect to be using those lists? Like, when would they become part of the standard?
Great question. So that I am not sure how we would be making the announcement that they are now kind of national standards, right? So it's a great question. So so to kind of take something on the table, will we hard code these lists into the XSD of the standard? No, we will not be doing that. So it won't be. We're hoping that if this is approved, that it doesn't represent a new build. So So how they will be recognized as the national lists that are required for these elements, we'll have to work through that. That's a great question.
Clay, has there been any sort of consensus amongst the DNC that sort of, hey, if we do this exercise and spend all this energy and building these new lists, that states are going to majoritarily sort of adopt it? Because what I fear is we do this exercise, we do a bunch of work for this, and then what ends up happening is every state says, oh, well, you know what? We want a different list because we want, you know, ketamine in ours or don't want ketamine in ours, right?
Yeah. Great question, Keenan. And I think that's why NHTSA is asking us to work very closely with the DMC and get them to come up with a policy statement that requests that all states use the list. Now, you know as well as I do that not all states participate in the DMC, and NHTSA is aware of that. Eric and John are both aware of that, and clearly, I think what we're trying to plot a course where we ensure that all states know what we're doing, have a voice, and all agree. Yeah, Keenan. I guess that's the best answer I can give you right now. I really don't have a really firm idea of kind of how NHTSA sees ensuring that the lists are used or requiring that the lists be used. Only if we can gain their support that they approve of this process and approach. I'm not sure where they'll go from there.
Clay, this is Ryan with R1. I have a quick question on the 90%.
Yeah, sure, Ryan.
That 90%, did we remove those values that we suspect or know are being used inappropriately or are being used out of proportion based on the provider fatigue, so that we're not re-implementing the recommended list with the worst choices of the first list?
Yeah, it's a great question. We held those conversations while we were reviewing the list. The bulk of that work was done by Julianne. Where we could see, just by doing internal validation tests, where we could see folks were really using these codes inappropriately, right? So we can look at cause of injury and look at other elements in the record to determine that that was clearly a mistake, right? And we could mark it up to provider fatigue. All of those ones that were utilized in that way were ones that should stay in the list, right? So pain is a perfect example of something that needs to stay in the list. So we took that into consideration, Ryan, but there were no like really oddball things that people were utilizing in some way that would have, if it was not used inappropriately, would have fallen into that 10% category.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Great question. Any other questions about that work? We hope to begin. Okay, great. I'll go on to the next item that I have here. We have probably 2 phone calls at least per week with CMMI as they begin to firm up their approach to collecting data from individual EMS agencies that are going to be participating in the ET3 project. On all these calls, we clearly propose to the CMMI development team that as closely as they can abide by the NEMSIS standard, the NEMSIS WSDL, the other components of data collection, as close as they can comply to utilizing those tools as they currently stand, the better their compliance will be and the easier it'll be for us to ensure that they have a successful data collection for this project. So we've had a call with them already this week. They are planning for data collection to begin in summer of 2020. I just wanted a quick question. How many of the vendors here on the call know that they have been included that there's been a submission for participation in ET3 of a client of yours.
Clay, I think it's a safe assumption that all the vendors have at least one customer.
Oh, great, great, okay, great. I wasn't sure whether it would be that broadly represented, but that's great. So we're working closely with them to ensure that they stick as close to the standard as possible. They did have an ask that they wanted me to bring to this group today. So they're putting together the technical specs, and then there are also security policies associated with submitting data to CMS. I'm sure each of you who have a state level product have worked through security issues associated with collecting data at a state level. Kate Woods, who's leading the work from the CMMI, just wanted me to ask what would be an appropriate lead time for data collection midsummer for them to ensure that they have at least a good representation of the technical approach and of the security process that they'd like to see. When would be the valuable lead time for you to get that to ensure that you feel comfortable with data collection beginning midsummer? Now, of course, the easy answer is last week, but I think they're looking to have things pretty firmly put in place by February, having a good idea with where they're going with their development and having development in process. So is it worth a conversation? How much lead time have you folks needed for your state products to have a state come on board? What's your onboarding lead time? Is there any state level products on the call?
Hey, Clay, this is Ryan with R1. I think February would be fine for us for a lead time for midsummer. I mean, we're at the point where we know we have customers that want to do ET3, and the sooner we can learn about things, the better, of course. But if they say they can have policies and technical specs to us in February, then that sounds good.
Thanks, Ryan. Hey, Nick, are you on from Image Trend? I see Nick's names, but he just may be listening in on the call. All right, any other comments from any other vendors? The interesting thing of this, of course, is that I think what they'd like to do is to they're going to be collecting data at the agency level. So they're hoping that their process just basically represents another pipe, I guess is the easiest way to describe it, for individual agencies to submit data to the state, and then if they're participating in ET3 to also be submitting that record to CMS. All right. Yeah, Nick's having some trouble with his audio, but he indicated that, yeah, that February would certainly work for them. They don't think they'll need much lead time. Yeah, sorry, I interrupted someone, sorry.
Clay, so was a proposed question, how long is the lead time for anyone who has an organization that intends on sending data to CMS or CMMI?
Yeah. Yes.
And so they've ironed out that they want it to come from the agency and not the state, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And I'll also just state that we are consistently communicating with the CMMI team that we want to ensure that vendors are brought in very early in the process of the development and fine-tuning of that process, just to ensure that there's lots of ways where this could go off the rails, and they're aware of that. So I think these early conversations are still pretty high level, and so I I'm hopeful that the beginning of the year, there'll be representation from the vendors on several of these calls that we're having with CMMI. And I'm not sure when the announcements are being made in regards to who has actually been accepted into the ET3 project. And I imagine after that point, the communications that we've had, there will clearly be opportunity for the vendors to be on the calls with them to work through these processes. So I hope folks don't feel like it's kind of behind closed doors. I think they're just trying to make sure that they're not making any silly assumptions at the beginning. Are there any other comments in regards to lead time? I think we'll just report back to CMMI that if you have those requirements in kind of the February, March period, that would work well. Are there any other comments? All right, Julianne, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thanks, Clay. Are there any items from the Office of EMS?
Yeah, I don't know if Eric's on the phone. He's had a very busy couple of days. Perhaps he's not on the call today. So.
Okay. What about open forum? Are there any questions, concerns that anyone wants to bring forward at this time?
Where are we? Oh, good, Peter.
Oh, so I have questions about the PCS changes. And also, I'm wondering, are we going to get a translation document for 3.4 to 3.5?
Yeah, great question, Peter. So to answer your latter question, we're working on that translation document right now. We've spent probably 20 to 30 hours this week completing that. We had it mostly done, but with the technical release that happened the end of November, we just wanted to hold off on some attributes of the document to ensure that we captured all the changes that were done then. Yeah, so we're a little bit behind. We indicated that it would be out in December. It will be out in December, but it's going to be later in December than we anticipated. And Peter, what was your first question about PCS? What was that related to?
So PCS released a notification that they're going to be adding new signer roles to, or I'm sorry, the CMS added that they would be adding new signer roles to the PCS.
So e-payment 05.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
So Clay, last time we talked, we discussed e-payment 05 and for NEMSIS 3.4 standard, and the sort of consensus was it would be addressed for 3.4 and all of that would be released to the vendor and the community. We're just looking for an update on it.
Oh yeah, thank you. So yeah, I think as it currently stands, and we haven't seen them yet, but I think the CMMI group is thinking of adding some values in the form of custom values both to e-payment 05 and to e-disposition 21. So e-disposition 21, yeah, so sorry, I'm mixing two topics here. Sorry, but I think they're both somewhat related. So yeah, sorry, let's begin with the CMMI. Thanks, Keenan. So CMMI is planning to add some elements to e-disposition 21, and they may be wanting to add some elements to e-patient 05 related specifically to ET3. So what we've worked out with them in regards to that is that we would develop kind of a national custom element addition to both e-disposition 21 and e-payment 05 moving forward. And so those are immediately available for those software packages that will be participating in ET3. And then Peter, your question is a good one as well, right? There's the recent ruling by CMS allowing 3 additional types of professionals to sign off on an EPCR, and so e-payment 05 needed to be updated. So that was updated in 3.5. Was it updated in 3.4 with the release? I don't.
Clay, we had talked about doing a national custom element for 3.4.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember whether that was chosen to be in or out for the new version of or to develop a critical patch for 3.4. Sorry, I'm really mixing a couple of topics in my mind. Yeah, so we so there's not this idea that a critical patch will come out for 3.4. That was voted down. When we spoke with the Office of EMS, they didn't want to open up the standard to add those values. So we'll develop a national custom element that would add those 3 values to ePayment 05. We're working right now to add a section to the website when you go into the custom element library, where there'll be a place for national custom elements. Yeah, sorry, Peter, you caught me off guard. I completely mixed up 2 topics in my head related to custom elements.
No problem there. And then I guess could we get some sort of communique once that's finalized and we know what we can do with it? Because we have folks asking us over on the vendor side about the changes that are going to be coming already.
Okay, great. And we're pushing to have all of that in place for you to be able to utilize early in 2020, because we know there's it becomes law and applicable in 2020. So we're working hard to get that ready.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Any other questions for open forum? So in the new year, we'll resume our regular meeting schedule. It'll be the 2nd and 4th Wednesdays of every month, unless we have notified you well in advance of a change. The only times that really changes is around holidays. So our next meeting is January 8th, same time, same place. Look for that invitation from your Google group or the DMC listserv. And as always, if there's anything that we can help you with, any questions that you've got, please feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to help in any way. Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your busy day to be with us this morning, and have a fabulous day. Thanks.
Happy holidays,
Thanks. Happy
everyone.
holidays.
Happy holidays.